Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Interviews with Wild People, the series where I routinely interview people who have gone through incredible dark nights of the soul, massive healing challenges, and have come out the other side into a completely new life with wisdom and knowledge to share. I believe that it's these types of people that we need to uphold and celebrate in our world, in our lives, as they hold the keys to our evolution collectively. Today, I have the honor of interviewing in this interview, which you're going to see, a really good friend of mine, Mystery Anaha. Now, Mystery has a pretty intense story. She was gang raped by two men, which flung her into the depths of suicidal depression, as you could imagine, and just terrible, terrible trauma and PTSD recovery from that incident. She had the choice of ending her life or actually healing from it and going through it. And she chose the latter. And it's quite an incredible story. As today, she is one of my best friends. She lives an incredible life. She travels all over the world. She has an incredible, beautiful family, beautiful daughter, and she assists people with healing in ceremony of all types. And one note about this interview, you'll notice that the quality of the video isn't the best as my lighting just wasn't in place for this interview. I hope you can excuse me because the content and the story makes up for it. So without any further ado, enjoy. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Interviews with Wild People. I have with me here today my beloved friend, Mystery Anaha. Welcome, Mystery. So, to remind you guys, the purpose and intention of the show is to interview and document people's stories, people who have gone through incredible healings and transformation in life, gone through incredible periods of darkness and have managed to come around full circle and turn that into gold, turn that into a way of life, into doing what they love. And so I am honored today to have Mystery with us today because she's an incredible example of a woman who has gone through tremendous difficulty and a story that you'll soon hear, and has been able to come through it all and transform and create a life where she's doing what she loves. And so, welcome, Mystery. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, beautiful brother. It feels very important to speak about my healing journey, and I really hope it can touch some ears and hearts to empower to see trauma as a deep path of activation and to reclaiming our full power and medicine of our soul.
So let's begin. I know you personally, and I know your story. People listening don't. So the story starts where I love to start it off is, the beginning of this. You were at a festival when you were young, and uh, you were gang raped by two men. And
Yeah.
what did that do to your life, and how did you recuperate from that? How did your journey go from there?
Hmm. Yeah, so 8.5 years ago, I was at a festival in the woods of Poland, and I got caught in the bushes while I was peeing. And I actually had two men that were very violently raping me an entire night. And my soul, my consciousness like disassociated because it was a very strong experience for me. And I found myself like without consciousness in the morning next to a fire. It was part of the festival without my trousers. And I just remember I woke up from this like weird space of feeling just like, oh, like so disconnected from like everything. Like I just felt horrible. And I walked back to the tent and my friends welcomed me and asked me where I was. And it was slowly sinking in what was happening. And slowly some pieces were falling into place. And so I told what my friends what happened, and I got brought into like a safe space of the festival, so like the healing zone, and my things were packed up, and it was I got transported back to Berlin where I lived at that time, and there were all kinds of procedures, and they brought me to hospital, and it was like all like a horrible story, and it ended even in a worser place with like doing like internal examinations and all the things you really don't want to be having when you're just recently traumatized. I was back in Berlin, like not really like knowing at all how to deal with this. And it just came dawning on me really like how deeply on all levels and in all my bodies, like this rape has impacted me. And so I got shown some contacts to speak to the woman's house, to speak with some people who could like help me through therapy, through counseling, through guidance. And relatively soon, I noticed that it wasn't my path. Like it wasn't my path to have like a verbal therapy and to get support and this very like victimizing, oh, you're a victim and we have to help you now, like with a lawyer. And it was like, for me, it wasn't really about these men, it was about myself. And so I entered into a period of very strong confusion and depression, and even up to the point where I was suicidal because for rape survivors, for people who underwent like such shocking and traumatic experience, it's very difficult to firstly speak about it, and then also the connection with the body and the heart. And I used to be a very embodied woman, dancing, doing performance arts, studying like tantra, working with sexuality. So being raped was hitting me even harder at that time because my path was actually around sexual healing and sexual embodiment at that time. And so I entered into like a period of darkness. And I don't even really like using this word of darkness because darkness always has this like reference of like evil or shadow. And it was like a big crisis where the person I was got shattered and I had to find a new path. And it was very difficult. So I got very depressed and I stayed in bed for a long time. I like my friends would came around and cook for me and like just sit next to the bed and like offer their support. So I received luckily like support from the community that I had, but no one could really help me with what happened. You know, like I feel when we experience a deep trauma of any kind, it puts us into a quest on how to not overcome and like exile and get rid of the trauma, but how to integrate this trauma into a way of seeing it as an initiation into a medicine that we're carrying and also into a power that comes from that. So at a day where I got into a very, very dark place, I stood on the balcony in Berlin and I was about to like just jump off the balcony to just end it. Like for me, it was horrible to feel like I can't be connected to me. I couldn't even go to the toilet without crying and wiping my yoni with toilet paper. I was in a very bad space and I just didn't know after 3 months already it being like that how to really get out of there. And so I stood on this balcony and I was like, oh, wow, like this is getting really serious. Like, what can I do right now? Like to call back my life, like to call back my strength to, and so I asked God and I said, please help me. Like, what do I need to do right now? Like to save myself. And I got my phone and I went into like an emergency suicidal hotline. And up to that point, I haven't felt any emotions. Like literally, I was numb, disassociated, and connected. And I told this guy, I was like, hey, I'm standing on my balcony. I'm probably thinking I'm going to kill myself right now. I really need help. And then this guy, like, he just, I don't know if he was not qualified enough or if that was his strategy, but he was such an asshole. Like, he actually made me upset. And I ended this phone call, like being on the suicidal hotline with like, you have no idea what you should tell anyone in a situation like that. Get a better job, you know? And I just like got angry. And I hung up the phone and I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling rage. I'm actually angry. And it was so good because I was feeling like something unblocked, you know, like rage, like aliveness, wildness, fiery. Something was back in my body. And I was like, okay, what's next? And I asked and I listened and I just heard a small voice saying, South America. And I was like, what? South America. I was like, really? And I was like, okay. And so like I sat with this voice and it got louder over the days. And never been up to that point in South America. Like I didn't knew anyone that traveled in South America up to that point. I didn't know how to speak Spanish. I basically didn't know anything. And so I went to Skyscanner and I checked the cheapest flight from any airport in Germany to any airport in South America with a Spanish speaking country, because I know that the call was I had to go to a Spanish speaking culture. And the cheapest ticket was Frankfurt, Quito. So 1 month later, I found myself, after packing my house in boxes, sub-renting my apartment, and like getting everything arranged, I found myself on a pilgrimage to South America. And so I landed in Quito. Actually, first I landed in the Dominican Republic because on the way to South America, I got stopped and I wasn't registered on the flight to the next destination. And so there was only one room in this like fancy resort, and I ended up with this Ecuadorian man, Ricardo, who is still a very special man in my life and who was a big part of my healing journey. And so we shared this like apartment for 2 days, and he lived close to Quito. So he invited me over to him. And his father, he was a very connected healer and a very connected shaman as well. And so I spent my time traveling and also visiting Ricardo and his father, who were very, very impactful in like helping me to integrate some of like my insecurities around men by just like their amazing radiant force of love that was opening so much like trust and relaxation in my root back. And one thing that really shifted everything and really initiated my healing journey was when I ended up with a beautiful tribe in the Amazon. And I arrived there with the intention to drink ayahuasca, which was my first time because I always felt drawn to the medicines when they were becoming more present in Berlin. But I always felt this urge to go to the root. I wanted to be in the jungle time. And so I found myself there, and the shaman, he actually had a vision of a white woman arriving. And a day later, I sat in ceremony with the shaman and his two sons who were apprenticing with him. And that was my first initiation to plant medicine. It was not how I expected it to be, but it was the start of a very, very deep journey and rebirthing through the power of plant medicine. And so I have my first experience with the medicine with a beautiful tribe in the Amazon. And I continued my journey integrating the first ceremony, which was very rather physical than any kind of like extraordinary visions that were showing and revealing a new path to me. It was just a lot of purging. And then I got really tired, and he served me some more. And he was actually really surprised by how much medicine I could drink, because he said he never saw a white woman being able to drink the amounts of medicine he was serving me. So I was like, okay. Well, I continued my journey, and I found different tribes and different traditions in the Peruvian Andes and the Peruvian Amazon. Then I was in Brazil with a different tribe. So I traveled an entire year in South America. And like what always was guiding me was an invisible force bringing me to medicine keepers and sacred places. So the combination of like remembering through the power that these portals of sacred temples and places of worship, places of prayer hold, with the combination of plant medicine and the time to be able to have that year to integrate this experience that happened, and also to help me shifting, releasing, and aligning my vibrations, and also the pains that got stuck, the soul fragments of myself that got dispersed and disassociated through what happened to me. And so that first year after the rape was very, very important, and which was starting, my journey in South America.
Wow. So
And
let's let's chunk this down a little bit. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing. It's actually the first time I heard the story like that in depth, and even hearing that and how it unfolded, brings a very visceral experience in my body. Having worked with trauma myself and with people, I know how debilitating it can be, or it can seem debilitating when we experience something like that. So fragmenting. You made a decision, it seems, somehow on some higher conscious level where you're like, I'm not going to entertain the victim, and I'm going to go a different path. And I feel like a lot of people can really get sucked into that. And it's kind of maybe even a necessary part of it, of the grieving after something, to because it is a terrible thing that happened, right? What in you allowed you to navigate that out of the victim and into somehow like embracing this as a path?
I really feel that in moments of deep despair, the veils are the thinnest. So when we have moments of like real shock and trauma and desperation, there's always, and also without those, but there's always a guiding force. So there's always a guardian angel. There's always some sort of messenger that will deliver a message of healing to us. And it comes in ways that we don't expect, right? Mine came through the connection I have with the spirit realm since I'm a very like small child, and also a very deep connection that before the rape I had with and in God. But it also comes through messengers such as friends. So I really feel like in these times of like great trauma and difficulty, it's really important to ask for guidance. Yeah. And for me, the safest way to ask for guidance is always the guidance of the higher dimensions of consciousness. So I feel like my plea for life, to ask for a sign what would help me to reclaim my life, was giving me the direction I had to walk. And I'm grateful I did, because the months before, and why it was so difficult to get out of this hole, it was all consuming and all absorbing. And it's very easy to get stuck in this like downward spiral of not knowing how to deal with that, of being impacted on all levels. And I feel when we ask for guidance, yeah, I either hear in the heart or a close friend or God, then we will be answered. And so I feel this is really something that helped me to shift out of that. And from the moment I heard the voice, I was like, oh, okay, there is something greater. And it was difficult for me to connect to that in that space of deep despair. And yet, because there was an energy coming back to guide me, I knew that this wasn't the end. And in fact, that was a big beginning.
I love that you decided to really look at it as a beginning of something new. What happened in that integration when you moved into being in these medicine spaces? And I know a lot of people go into ayahuasca and medicine spaces, and it's very uncharted territory. We go in expecting healing to happen, but very often it's very gnarly, because it's very disintegrating, or you really meet the parts of yourself that are disintegrated. It's kind of scattered, but you seem to be able to navigate through it and bring more and more of your wholeness back together.
Yeah, I really feel like something that I always was good at was asking questions. So like I remember the first time, like when I met the grandmother, and not the first time, because the first experience I had was really just purgative. So it was releasing a lot. I feel like, the medicine of ayahuasca, actually by the tribes very deep in the jungle, is actually called La Pulga, Yeah, and la purga means basically the purgatory. Yeah, so the purgerers. Yeah, so it's a medicine that makes you purge. So I feel like that ayahuasca, on not a conscious level, but first of all, really opened my channel and allowed myself to let go of a lot of the clutter and of like the density and of like, what I was holding on, what was feeling difficult. And in my medicine experiences afterwards, I always had this intuition and it was very natural to me to be with the medicine, to ask questions. So I would ask, what can I do to heal my heart? What can I do to heal my relationship with the body? Like, where is my life guiding me? What are my next steps? Because I used to be a Vipassana meditator and for many years, and also a meditation teacher in my prior life. Like, I was very connected to meditation and witness meditation, where we just simply witness what arises. And I feel that was a very good preparation for me to be in medicine spaces. So my intuition guided me into asking. So it helped me to figure out, what are the next steps? What is the thing that I have to work on? And it wasn't that necessarily that I sat in the ceremony and asked, how can I heal my rape? Because I understood from the moment I went into this journey that it was an initiatory process, which would not be finished very quick. And I also realized, like, after now living with this rape, like since more than 8 years, that there are still layers of me integrating what happened, because it is something that will always not determine who we are. And this is where I feel like we're shifting out of trauma into empowerment. The rape is not who I am, but the rape is something that I did experience. So it is part of the narrative of my existence. It is part of my story. And it is also a big part that shifted my path into what I'm doing today, which is working as an earth medicine keeper, serving medicines, and also helping other people to recover and work with deep trauma, sexual trauma, trauma of violence, and any other forms of trauma. So looking back, like I really chose the I chose trauma as a process of activation, and I allowed myself, and I was blessed enough I could take this year for myself, that I had the finances, like that I had like the space to just say, I'm out of here. Because I'm not sure what, without this devotion and nourishment towards myself, of allowing myself to be completely new made and go through this rite of passage. I was turning off my phone. I wasn't communicating with anyone. There was no one that I sent out a monthly email like to my family and friends so they knew what was happening. I was very like in this deep rite of passage with myself, allowing the journey, the sacred spaces, the temples, the ceremonies to guide me into who I am, into the medicine, into the power. So for me, it was the beginning of who I am today.
So, it's amazing because you've created a way of life out of the so-called darkness that you experience. Um, Many people don't get that far, or maybe don't see that opportunity. And so I hope that this can be inspiring for those watching to really take what you've experienced and really, like, the way you assume that this was just like given to you as an initiatory passage, rite of passage, the way you say it. I love that. It's beautiful. That was kind of my next question. I was going to ask, do you think you actually called this in? Because you were on the path of sexual exploration and before the rape, right? And today, I also know you as one of the most sexually liberated people on the planet. I don't think I know anybody else on a similar path. Like, there's nothing taboo. You're able to talk about everything and really assist people with that and heal people, assist people in their healing, rather. So that's really beautiful. But I guess you kind of already answered that question. Um,
I want to share something to that, because it is something that I have been asking myself afterwards as well, of like, to which extent have I called this in? To which extent I needed this experience? To which which extent I deserve this? Yeah, because I looked from many different angles. When I was going through healing this big wound of that this actually has happened to me, right? And I was looking at it from the karmic angle that I have been a perpetuator and a rapist. So now from this side to heal this, I had to experience it like this, or it is like that, or because I was disembodied in some parts of my sexuality, life put me on the right path. I don't know how or why, and it also really doesn't matter. What I understood, and this is the most important thing, is that life is not happening against me. It is happening for me. And this is something I had to learn the hard way because I got floored not only that time, but also my childhood wasn't very sweetly. Like things happened, along the way. And I always used to kind of like just gallop over it, like just sweep it under the carpet or like disconnect. And it was something where life has put me into a place where I couldn't avoid anything anymore. So it was actually the rape that has opened an even more devoted self-healing journey. And so when something happens as big to a friend of yours, to all those who are listening and watching, it's not the why that really matters. What really matters is what now. What can we do with this to support your heart, to support your soul, to support your healing? Yeah. Because I had people like when I was sharing, and I shared with very, very few what happened, that people said, oh, always happens something for a reason, or why don't you go to a specialist and you just delete the memory and you delete the brain? There's someone in Munich that you could go to. And this is really inappropriate when people are trying to find their way with it. It doesn't matter if they called it in or if they even deserve it in someone else's eye, or this all really has no importance. What is important with people who've been recently traumatized is how can we support them so they can feel that love still is in their life? Because what happens through trauma is it breaks our capacity to trust into life, to feel loved, and to feel taken care of. And so this is really like, it's an interesting question. And I want to emphasize on that because people, will maybe ask that. And I think for someone that's really freshly underwent a huge trauma, it's very important to not make that a priority to speak about or even to figure that out, because I have asked myself that as well. And it doesn't lead anywhere. What really leads somewhere is questioning how I can maneuver now with this reality. So I can go the upwinding spiral and not downward one.
Yeah, and I love that question. How is this happening for me? It's one that I ask very often. We have to assume that it is happening for you, that it is actually here as a gift in some way, shape, or form. So we don't resist the experience. We don't make it wrong. If you make it wrong, well, then you're wrong. You're just a victim. You're on the butt end of the stick of something being really wrong. And it's not that it's right, because what happened was wrong. Like, we don't want to encourage that kind of thing. And yet it just happened, right? And I think that's like the main thing to come into acceptance with. I think we struggle a lot with acceptance, on the path of healing. That's, at least for me, that's like the latest struggle. One of the things lately that I'm experiencing is like noticing in my mind, I'm 38 now, so I'm sure some people will laugh because that's probably still regarded as young. But there's like a lot of things that I want to do in life, that there's like a fear that's coming up, like, wait a minute, I'm kind of fucking up a lot of things. Maybe I will never get to all these things. And I'm just dying. And oh my God, I should try harder and do more. And I was having a really funny thought yesterday as I was coming home on my motorcycle. I was like, maybe it's just time to die. You just have to start getting ready to like really embrace death. And there was so much peace in that. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Like the mind can really freak out. Like maybe I really won't do all those things. I mean, I
And
don't
you
want
know
to be like
what,
a
love?
dad, but yeah, go
I
ahead.
think this is important what you're sharing about. Maybe it's time to die because we live in a culture and in a society that has forgotten about the necessity to die. Because in the ancient traditions and in the cultures, we have ritualized moments of change, moments of transition. Yeah. The rite of passages that we underwent from when we were a girl or a boy into youthful, into being a young adult, going through our Saturn return, like all these initiations where one part of us inner consciously ritualized was let go of, it was creating so much space for new things. But because we haven't practiced, yeah, most of us hasn't been blessed with such conscious caretakers that could help us through transitioning and ritualizing moments of change. And this is something very, 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 very important, you know, what you're saying, because it is often time to die. Yeah. And this is why in shamanism and curanderismo, we're also using the snake as a totem animal because it teaches us the necessity of death, rebirth, and life. Yeah. And so the Ouroboros or the snake or the dragons, like many of these like totem symbols, they teach us exactly that. Yeah. That it's time to die and then a new version can arise. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always a good idea to die, you know, because if death is knocking on your door and the skin is getting too tight, then you better go into a death ritual.
Yeah, and I feel like that's such a necessary part of the healing process and something that I feel like you really embraced in this thing. Like, okay, the person before the rape, like she's dead. Like I'm not going back there. Like a lot of us, we try to go back to the way things were, and that never works in the trauma healing sense. Like it's now part of you. Right? Okay, this actually happened. She's dead. Like, and that's kind of what I a layer that unfolded for me yesterday. I was like, wow, maybe actually I'm dying. And, maybe it'll still take 50, 60, 70 years, but wow, what would that mean? What is it? Maybe I can actually let go of trying to hold all this shit together and make it happen and make $1 billion by the time I'm 50 and all these things. And then there's like a wisdom that comes in. Okay, there's a peace, there's a knowing that like, wow, I've actually died many times before. What was all the fuss about?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I really would love to find out from you how that reintegration has changed you now. Where are you functioning from these days? What's the fire underneath mysteries, butt, so to speak, that allows you to do what you do? Because you're an incredible woman. You host space now for men and women all around the world, assisting people in healing trauma, healing their sexuality, sacred sexuality, serving medicine, hosting space. And I know recently you've gone through transition right now, also, where you're coming more into even deeper depth, of even more peace around this. So to back up this question, yeah, what are you up to right now, and how has the healing that you've been through affected that?
Yeah. I feel that it's a very beautiful question because I also underwent in last December, a very deep month of spiritual study with my maestro, where I also did 2 dietas and committed to do these every years now. I'm taking people there as well. And having had that space and being back in the jungle for this beautiful time of study, I realized that because I could never quite put a finger on it. Like if I would describe my work, it has so many elements like of shamanic circles and archetypal work and sacred sexuality and embodiment and trance and movement and a big pillar obviously is the medicine work. And I was like, how can I like put this all into what am I doing? Right? Like, what is my core message? And it's only recently really falling into place in that crystal clarity, which is that I am walking the path of nothingness. Yeah. So when you speak about fire, it's interesting because I do have a lot of fire, but actually, what drives me in my life and what is kind of like my quest, and also what I teach others, is to become so empty that only what is true is left. So I feel like a lot of the work I'm doing is like helping people to let go of the story they have about themselves or about the world, about their life, how it used to be, about the belief systems that shape them, about the limitations that shape them. So I help people to become empty. Yeah, it's not a process. I don't help anyone to become anything. Like I don't want anyone to be anything or anyone specifically. What I really invite and what I call for is a space of unbecoming. Yeah. It's like a liberation into who are you without all that you are not. And so I feel like this is the fire under beneath like all that I'm doing, to become so empty, only the eternal prayer of our soul is left.
I love that. And I asked that question because part of what we do in the Star Tribe is assist people in really discovering their purpose. Now, a lot of people want to do what they love, but they're not really clear on their purpose. And I strongly believe that you have to get clear on that purpose. And getting clear on your purpose isn't something you can just look up in a book or go through like a two-step process and be like, oh, this is my purpose. It's such a shamanic undertaking. It takes going through life and it takes going through stuff to get there. And I feel like you radiate that. You really radiate that in all the work that you do. And it's come through this incredible journey that you've been through. I love that. Walking the path of
And
nothing.
I would like to I think it's such a beautiful question, like that I often get asked, like, how can I like discover like my dharma, like my real path? Like, how can I live my passion? How can I live like what is the medicine of my heart? What is the message, the prayer of my spirit? Yeah. And what I recommend, and this is like just a very practical approach, but something that used to be very, very, and still continues to be like an effectful, very handy way, is prayer. So for me, like I have a couple of prayers in my life, and one started actually with my trauma, where it was one of the prayers that I was saying was, "Help me to be, to give, to receive, and serve medicine of love." And it was a prayer that came out of such a deep place of my being. And it guided me in every ceremony. I asked that as my main intention. In every hape I served for myself or I received, I asked that. So like I really feel like when we're committing to, hey, like I'm ready, I want to step into what am I here to be doing, right? What is my righteous place in the universe? I really feel what supports is like a self-initiated rite of passage, like create an offering to Mother Earth, place your hands down, like thank her for all the abundance, for all the gifts, for all the encounters, for all the beings, for all the beauty she already sent to you. Thank her for all the difficulty, for everything she's given to you. Or you can pray to Father Sky or to God or to everyone you feel connected with, and then ask, please guide my steps. Please make me see, make me feel, make me connect with what it is that my deep longing and my soul's aching for. And for me, like this always made such a big difference. When I was ready for a sacred union, I was calling out to the heavens. I was like, I am ready for sacred union. Bring me my man. And so like all these prayers, they came true. Even in such a way, the prayer of being and serving the medicine of love, because now I have a retreat since 4 years. It's called the medicine of love. And I needed to smile when the name came through it, because the prayers, when they really come from a deep place, they support us in creating that connection with life that guides us, so we can deeply listen how we're being guided. And I feel that's, it's quite mystical, like, and spiritual, but I find it very practical. Choose a prayer, stick with it, and see what happens.
I love it. I recently interviewed my sister, and here on Interviews with Wild People as well. And there's a similarity in the stories of really praying for your purpose and praying for your joy. Just following joy is one amazing way to move towards purpose and amazing unfolding in life. But very often we don't even know what it is. We feel numbed out. Like if somebody told you when you were after the rape, just follow your joy, you'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? I can't feel anything. Right. And so it sometimes takes prayer to be like, please show me the way. Please show me where this thing, that joy even is. Because I've forgotten what it is. I've forgotten what it even means. We just know the word, but we don't know what it feels like somatically in the body. And I was recently talking to another friend who I've also interviewed here, Holly, and she said something I think you really like. She said, Casper, purpose isn't the thing that that's my purpose. It's the thing that you have to do in order to experience yourself feeling alive. And that really hit me vibrationally. It shifted me recently. I never thought of it that way. If it's like, what's that thing that I have to do in order to actually feel like myself, in order to feel me, feel like me? And then it's not even a choice anymore. It's like, well, there it is. I know if I do that thing, I feel myself, I feel alive. Wow. It's like a divine obligation now. So you can hear your soul speaking. And I feel like the path both you and I, and a lot of people I talk to are on right now is really dying to the false purpose, the false egoic purpose that can keep us burning out, doing things because we want to feel seen, because we want to feel heard, because we want to, because like, oh no, I'm dying. I haven't created the success I need to. So I better do stuff so I don't feel this pain. And what does it take to actually channel your soul, to actually do what your soul wants to do, which is radically different than what your ego wants to do? I want to hear about your journey with that because I know you've recently been through kind of a burnout, almost doubting whether you should be doing what you're doing. And how have you come through that?
Yeah. Wow. Like if you would have asked me half a year ago or 7 months, what was the underlying fire of why I'm doing what I'm doing, or why I'm doing more of what I should actually be doing, I would have probably said a really deep unworthiness. And it's interesting because, like, even though it is my dharma and it is my greatest joy, I also used to find myself in way more ceremonies and in way more group containers than actually would have been healthy for like my own physical health. And also, I'm a mother. I just finished breastfeeding also half a year ago. So I went through probably the biggest expansion in like my work as a spiritual leader and as like as a guide to many people that like surround me and that I work with, to being awake 7 times a night and breastfeeding. And so like I noticed that like I have had a tendency for over giving, yeah, which was like a speed kind of from the society and from the conditioning of like the pulse of life that I was coming from Berlin. And even though I was doing what I loved doing, there was still a part of me that hasn't fully had time to like catch up with like finding my own speed in that. So I noticed that even though I shifted like my entire universe and I shifted my field and area of work, and I went full time into this work like 5, 6 years ago, I was still running patterns. And this is something that I find very humbling because we're getting shown all the time, like, especially those who are committed to see. And even sometimes, if we don't want to see, just life decides that we have to look at our motivations and how clear we are. And so recently I got shown that I've overgiven because it was like my way to avoid myself from feeling the malnourished little girl inside of me. Yeah. So like there's often this wound in healers, like to I almost could see that I tried to avoid people to feel what I was going through, like when I was a little girl and when I was raped. So I tend to overgive. And it was like not in the paradigm that I actually want to live and want to work in, because the rise also of the sacred feminine teachings on the planet is actually that our feminine should be nourished to serve from a full cup. So actually, when we're serving, it's overspill, yeah, because like first, the nourishment should come first. And it was difficult for me, because being awake all night, and this is where I really resonate with what Holly said, like it's not the greatest thing, right? You're surrounded by people that are screaming and purging, and maybe someone shed themselves, or like, really big liberations, lots of entities in the space. So I wouldn't say like follow your joy, I would probably be a gardener, yeah, and just breathe my roses and like do little things, right? That's joyful. Like I'm joyful when I'm like singing to my roses and doing medicines. And yet the medicine work, is something that I have to do because it is part of my journey. And now I'm integrating the reasons why and also creating balance. And I think it's ongoing for mothers or not mothers, for any kind of like stage of like self-employment, of like being autonomous, like in your decisions and in your work. That was a big teaching. Like learn to say no. And this is something that was misguiding for me, because my first shamanic teacher, where I studied with like when I was in the beginning of my 20s, she actually made us give an oath. Yeah. And that oath was like, we should help when we can. And this is something I disentangled as well, because so I noticed myself saying yes to way more ceremonies and way more one-on-one sessions that I was actually being able to like hold from a full cup, because I made that oath, if I can help, I should. Yeah. So lots of things like that I needed to pick apart to actually like arrive. For the first time, I celebrate actually this week, for the first time, I said no to a ceremony where I was invited to be flown out into a beautiful retreat center in nature. And it was like, no, like I can't do this. I have to take care of my energy. And so that priority that I give to myself is something that I found new in and amongst this whole process of like finding myself depleted and really wanting to continue to give from a full heart and from a healthy body. Because I feel Dharma and our passion and serving our medicine in whichever way that comes is something that we want to be doing all our life, right? So this is also where we don't have to rush, right? Like you were sharing, like, oh no, I'm 38, like I want to have done this already. And I hear that from many people, like, oh no, like I have this beautiful private client. She's like 45 and she's now finding her Dharma and her passion. And she's like, oh, but it's so late. And I said, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Some people meet their big love with 65. Like, time is just such a construct, And if we really truly trust that we are, walking, as children of God here on this beautiful earth, being able to experience all the blessings and all the big scope of human emotions and range of existence, then where's the rush? Where's the mistrust into our path? And it all stems from this like patriarchal capitalist culture of comparison, of do more to be more. And we are all indoctrinated by that. The beautiful tribes living protected in their reserves, are not as bad as we, but like most of us, let's get real, has grown up with that. Like you have to like prove yourself to be a good woman, like you have to prove yourself, put yourself out there and be successful and make 6, 7, 8 figures, like to be a good like man, that made it in the world. Like all these things, even though we're like spiritually awakening, they're still in us, like we're still human, like they're still our program. And it is an ongoing journey of like integrating, okay, this is me, this is my program, this is my dharma, this is my path. And then somehow maneuvering in that. And sometimes, like last half year was again a crisis of like having a burnout so bad I couldn't lift my arm in bed and just wanted to continue crying all day, And I knew, and you were actually there, my beautiful brother, like very closely to me in that time of healing and realizing the patterns that brought me into this space. And now I'm actually, yeah, I feel like so grateful again, like that I went through that, being able to hold myself in much more integrity, love, compassion, like softness than I could ever do before.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that part. I feel like this is something that I'm struggling with right now, actually, quite a lot with, because like the more I can get really inspired with things that I want to do. And before I know it, I have like a piece of paper of like 10 things that are really inspiring. I really want to do them. And the next day I'm like, how the hell am I going to do all this stuff? And then the voice comes in like, well, if you don't do it, then blah, blah, blah. And uh, yeah, it's such a beautiful, beautiful balance to keep returning into what our souls actually really want. You said, just gardening
Ugh.
and playing more. Yesterday, I had a whole day planned of stuff I was going to do. And then, like, halfway through the day, my soul just came in and was like, nope, you're done for the day. And in the past, I would like struggle with it. And I was like, no, okay, I'm really done. it's it's finished. Like, I'm just gonna listen to silence and the birds. And it was beautiful. And very often, like what our soul wants is so different than that voice of that conditioning. We think that if we're not doing, we're not actually building our business or our life. But I'm learning more and more that it's really the other way around. Like when we focus on nurturing ourselves, you are building your business, you are building your life because everything is emanating from you. It's like it's not this compartmentalized thing of like, here's my business and my money, here's my relationship, and then there's my playtime. Like, no, it's all just being well now.
And recently, I actually heard this beautiful talk from Teal Swan, which I think is a very, very inspiring woman. Like, and she said, like, the thing about divine motivation, I don't know if she used those words, but that's kind of like the message that was behind there. And she said, like, if you stop looking to the left and the right and you see everyone like starting to run, like chasing after their dreams and like really going hard for it, and you're sitting there thinking, like, fuck, I should be doing the same, right? Because everyone's running, everyone's chasing, like everyone's going into that direction. So I should as well. But actually, if we would just take a moment to truly listen, what is it that I want to do right now? Yeah. And to follow that inspiration, right? And inspiration is in spirit. So it's the way that spirit is guiding us. Yeah. So if I follow my inspiration, and that inspiration might be to listen to the bird, to sit by the beautiful river of Shambhala, like, and then suddenly, like the surge of energy comes because you're in such deep connection with life that actually your informed action by that like deep prayer and like communion with nature or with your heart, or you had a beautiful orgasm and suddenly like all this life force like brings you into the direction and it becomes effortless. It can still be tiring and it can still be like exhausting what we're doing, because let's get real, like it's not like just because it's our dharma and we love what we're doing, like it's still tiring. Yeah, it still can be tiring, but it becomes effortless. It's that choiceless choice that you were referring to. And this is a very beautiful thing because it puts the pressure away. Yeah. And we also need discipline, right? We need spiritual discipline to sit in meditation and to help us to actually connect and to practice deep listening so we can listen to the messages. And some actions do require that, like discipline. And an informed sacred masculine pillar inside is very useful in having a business and like in walking a path and like not only just like being in your fluid feminine and like seeing wherever like life takes you, but what I really liked about what Teal Swan was sharing, it's just like that it comes from that moment when you think like you're not doing anything. Yeah. That actually you're gathering like all the force and the strength you need to go ahead with what truly excites you.
Mm, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing, Mystery. So you've gone through this incredible transformation. It's just wonderful to see where you are right now in life. You're just an amazing example of a woman who's walked the path, gone through tremendous difficulty, trauma, and you owned it, accepted it, allowed it to heal you, transmute you, and you're just radiating guidance and showing us what's possible when we don't fall into the victim and actually deeply, deeply embrace everything, everything, everything as part of the path, and actually turn the darkness, so-called darkness, into medicine. And so your retreat is, the medicine of love. I've been on that one. Very beautiful. You've got an amazing partner in your life, a beautiful little girl, who I've got to meet and spend time with a lot. So thank you for being a light and for doing what you do. Any last words you'd like to share with those listening?
Yeah, just when you were sharing about, that like so-called darkness, I had like a little thought about how in shamanism and in curanderismo, like we understand that medicine has to be bitter for it to be recognized as medicine for the body. Yeah. So you would never put sweetener into a glass of ayahuasca, and also if you would connect with the Mayan traditions, like how they used to serve their cacao traditionally was with chili, yeah, and salt. There was no sweetener in the cacao because the bitterness makes the body realize that we're in a moment of medicine. Yeah. And I just had this beautiful thought of like, when we're recognizing that we are in a moment of medicine, yeah, when life gets really bitter, when it tastes really shit, gets really rough and uncomfortable, actually, that it's a beautiful reminder how the native cultures and tribes refer to the importance of the medicine being bitter. So trauma is medicine, and this is medicine is being served bitter. This is why it is so difficult, because it is that medicine that will open a new stage of blossoming on our path.
Love it. What are you doing that you'd love to share with the audience? Anything in particular? I know you're starting a podcast soon, the Unveiling the Veil with Mystery.
Lifting the veil. Yeah, I'm soon gonna do that. But yeah, I live in Spain, close to Granada. So I hold in-person retreats for anyone that is interested. They can personally reach out to me to receive more information. There are medicine weeks or also weekends that I'm facilitating. And I also work as a mystic mentor and guide for people who are interested in one-on-one guidance with me, in a container that I call the Metamorphosis Mentorship. And I also have an apothecary, so I make my own medicines, agua florida, tinctures, and oils. So if anyone is interested, they can either check out my Instagram, Mystery Anaha. I'm sure you will link all the information, or send me an email via medicineoflove@protonmail.com.
Thank you so much. So, guys, give a round of applause to Mystery if you're watching. Thank you so much. And all the links are down below. If you feel drawn to this amazing, radiant woman and her work, you can contact her, reach out to her, and figure out how you guys can work together if you want to, connect and see if she could be of service. I highly recommend. So thanks so much, Mystery. Thank you so much for being here. It's been an honor.
Thank you so much for having me, being able to share. And yeah, for all those who are listening out there, you're doing great. Just keep on following your heart, keep on praying, and keep on listening.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you next time.